My name's Bobby Tim, and I'm doing my presentation on the Llangollen ladies and from Zadie Smith's The Fraud. So who were they? They were two upper-class Irish women. Their names were Eleanor Butler and Sarah Ponsonby. Their relations scandalized and fascinated contemporaries. The pair moved to a Gothic house in Llangollen, North Wales in 1780 after leaving Ireland to escape the social pressures of conventional marriages. I think is interesting. It's rare to actually, I was looking for pictures of them alone, and yet they're always together. And Eleanor Butler was born in 1739 at Cambrai, Nord Pas de Calais, from an Irish Catholic aristocratic family. She lived in Kilkenny Castle from the 1750s to 1778. She received a liberal French education, and one source said that her family considered her an overeducated bookworm. Sarah Ponsonby was born in an Anglo-Irish family in 1755. Her dad was an MP for Newtownlands. She was orphaned in 1768 and attended. She was placed as a boarder in Miss Park's school in Kilkenny, and Eleanor was appointed her tutor. They became inseparable friends, and over the next 6 years carried on a secret correspondence. Her guardians, the Founds family at Woodstock, were anxious to find a suitable rich husband. Not only that, but her powerful guardian, Sir William Fowles, had persecuted her with unwelcome attentions. So they essentially tried to flee to England. So in the summer of 1778, with a maidservant, Mary Carlisle, they fled from Kilkenny. Llangollen is right here on the map of Wales. If you can see my cursor next in the northern section, right to that orange dot. They were dressed up as men, and they were wearing pistols, riding horses, and they were soon caught by both families. However, one source said that they fled again. The other one, which I like a lot better, says that they outlasted the families. And essentially they moved to Llangollen. And as you can see, they had a beautiful home, but they worked hard on it and spent a fair amount of money on this particular home. They ended up buying, let's see, adding a new chimney, a new door. You can see the lovely carved oak, the wrought iron entryway, the stained glass windows, the gardens. Patricia Hempel uses the phrase hyperactive domestication. They essentially did not leave their house. They had a rigid schedule that we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. They continued to wear those the men's clothing, and their visitors would comment on it. However, what I love is that the local people thought them sensible, wearing outdoor clothes for a farm and garden life. Hampel also mentions that theirs cannot be understood as a life of hedonism or even precisely aestheticism, that a daily regimen as monastic orders do, strict rule of life. Their leisure, like a monastery's, was ruled by the clock. The domestic order may have been part of their enchantment. It turns out that they had many famous guests, both political and literary, that visited their homes, and the frequent word that keeps popping up from their comments about their stays is that the two ladies were enchantresses and that it was an enchanting place. So you can see Shelley, Byron, Wordsworth. Wordsworth wrote a sonnet to the two ladies. The man on the right here, top right, is Josiah Wedgwood. And I love this expression that he went to tour and opine about the rock formations of the surrounding savage landscape. The man on the left is Erasmus Darwin, and yes, he and his son both visited the house, along with Anglo-Irish politicians. And let's see, 5 years, let's see. 5 years into their stay, the Queen of England wanted the plans to their garden. Let's see. But the plans were lost, perhaps discarded. Queen Charlotte was known to abhor the scent of musk, the very perfume the ladies lavished on their linens, and all correspondence sent from Place Newell. That anything posted from the cottage was redolent of their signature funky fragrance. That's Hempel's words, but in spite of the musk, the word from those who visited was the cottage and environs was beguiling. Rustification or writing retreat. Dr. Johnson, the man who said who tires of London, tires of life, called fashionable rustication a civil suicide. But these women were also writers, and I think that's why Hempel, as someone who's done work in memoir and autobiography, what found them to be extremely, well, they are interesting, but I love her quote that these women picked up the pen the way we tap on a cell phone, passing the latest to each other in reams of sinuous, dependent clause, heavy prose, transcribing whole volleys of dialogue from dinners and tea parties, unfurling descriptions of spring blossoming and autumnal murk from long walks in all weathers. In a sense, they were all writing essays, meandering in their minds, and sometimes taking on questions of the day, like slaveholding, environmental depredations, and the recent alarming rumors from France. Along with fame, yes, they were gaining attention, and of course, let's see, you can see that there were articles in the General Evening Post that so offended the ladies that Eleanor immediately wrote to cancel their subscription for essential reasons. They were sometimes praised for choosing lives of virginity, and the idea that they had a sexual relationship may just not have occurred to many of their visitors. The ladies threatened legal action against one newspaper for describing their extraordinary female affection in unflattering terms, also suggesting Eleanor dressed as a man and was the masculine half of the couple. Even as I found a source in that was published in 2015 called The Irish Ladies of Llangollen, the two most celebrated virgins in Europe. Scholars debate whether they were lesbians. Theirs was a relationship. It certainly caused a stir in 18th, 19th century society. Its true nature remains subject of debate. Were they a lesbian couple at a time when the word lesbian had not been coined to mean a romantic relationship between women? They certainly spoke of each other using terms of affection, such as my love and my beloved, in a manner that could suggest a sexual relationship to modern sensibilities. Anne Lister, who is described as the first modern lesbian, was fascinated by the ladies of Llangollen and their lifestyle. She read about them in an article and visited in the newspaper and visited Sarah Ponsonby in 1822. In a letter she wrote, I cannot help thinking that surely it was not platonic. Heaven forgive me, but I look around within myself and doubt. I feel the infirmity of our nature and hesitate to pronounce such attachments uncemented by something more tender still than friendship. As you can see on this page, that many people still take pilgrimages to their home. Susan Ormond, in her essay, Going in and on an Outing, the Historic House in Queer Public History, talks about the use of the metaphor of ghosting, and her article examines the ways in which lesbian, gay, queer, and other visitors have looked for sexual dissidence in historic houses and their former inhabitants by exploring the complicated process through which visitors both identify with those queer past lives and experience a sense of the otherness or historical distance from them. She begins her essay talking about Mary Gordon, a retired physician who visited the house, who ended up writing a book published by Hogarth Press by Leonard and Virginia Woolf. And she writes that when she visited, I had at once an overweening impression of their invisible but actual presence there. They followed me all over the house, either by my side or close by me. They arranged to meet that evening. They made their appointment and talked about the progress of women's rights in the 19th century. And I'm interested, I'm writing a paper on The Little Stranger. So it hit me that in 1935, a doctor visits their house and can believe in ghosts. In terms of Zadie Smith's The Fraud, I think, gosh, at the center, her Eliza's relationship with both Francis and William, I think, is fascinating, and it challenged, as I see Smith challenging the script of romantic love and marriage. She's when you think about it, she and William, in that poignant moment when he passes away and she's there holding his body crying, you realize that they've had a long relationship and she has loved him for an incredibly long time. And yet she also loved Francis. She also says that if she had another life to live, she could love Andrew Bogle. So I think she mentions the Llangollen ladies when she goes with Sarah, William's second wife, to the meeting where they're protesting slavery in Jamaica. And I think the best description of the Llangollen ladies that I'm impressed with their 50-year relationship. And I love this description that they were literary subjects and two courageous and audacious Irish women who broke away from the restraints of conventional lifestyle, their sex and lives. I also think it's interesting that these ladies keep popping up in her memory, Eliza's memory, because in a way when I saw I had this topic, I had no idea who they were. And what's really interesting is Patricia Hampel didn't know who they were either. And yet there's a lot of information about them. And so it raises the question about why don't we know more? Why don't we know more about them? And I think obviously Zadie Smith wants us to kind of think about their role in history and to think about the debate. Because I think in many ways she's challenging kind of our perceptions of history, especially when she presents that depiction of Charles Dickens, and it forces me to consider how much I think of the Victorian age and how it's been shaped by Dickens' writing, for example. And yet, as a postmodern writer, I think in a way she's planting seeds for the future to a certain degree by in a way taking on Dickens and by challenging kind of this perception we have of them and forcing us to perhaps read our history a lot more carefully. So that is it. Here are the sources I used. And it was a pleasure doing this project. Thank you.